Welcome to Stagecoach Podcast, where you will find the best Western books on the market. This podcast is brought to you from Dusty Saddle Publishing, also referred to as DSP, the home of Western excellence, where around the world people still enjoy the Old West, and DSP works hard to provide great Western novels for readers to enjoy. First, let's dive into the plot. Finn Sullivan continues his adventures in the beautiful but unforgiving American West in this continuation of his exploits, featured in Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man Wolverine. Finn and his loyal Ute partner, Little Dove, find themselves on the dark, dangerous trail of a sadistic, cold-blooded Assiniboine Indian appropriately named Rattlesnake. Along this mission, they meet new folks from far-off lands and find themselves in more than a little bit of trouble. Will they catch up to the murderous, poisonous Rattlesnake, or will they succumb to the punishing West before exacting justice? In this episode, we'll be reading Finn Sullivan Mountain Man, Rattlesnake, Book 2 by author Scotty V. Casper. This is Part 4. Without further ado, join us as we read.
Chapter 8. Hot-blooded Spanish Mademoiselle. Finn, Oliver, and Little Dove rode into a country that was full of wonders they didn't know such geographic features existed in the world. The area later known as Yellowstone was first discovered by John Colter after he finished with the Lewis and Clark Discovery Expedition. But Colter wasn't the first human to wander the beautiful country. Human beings lived there as far back as 11,000 years. I suppose one could say that Colter officially discovered the region in modern times. Pioneers like to call it Colter's Hell, and the Indians referred to it as the stinkin' land. Hydrogen sulfide sets up a stink in the geyser basins. The threesome looked over hot springs, geysers, and travertine terraces in brilliant colors. They marveled at a geyser that would later be known as Old Faithful. While they rode about in the region, they discovered a canyon much like the Grand Canyon, but smaller in scale, waterfalls, and abundant game animals. They figured it would be hard to starve if a person decided to take up residence in Colter's Hell. I sort of hope we don't catch up with Rattlesnake in here. I think it would be sacrilege to have a pitched battle in this region because everything seems to have been touched by the hand of God, Finn said, attempting to be eloquent. I agree, Oliver said. They were running out of meat, so Finn stepped a little ways out of the camp and killed an elk. There was a whole herd grazing along a hillside just above camp. Little Dove prepared elk steaks that evening, and she supplemented the meal with acorns, seagull lily bulbs, and wild raspberries for dessert. It was an unusual assortment of wild foods, but everybody ate it and enjoyed it. They were hungry. After dinner, they all chipped in and cleaned up the dishes, pots, and utensils. Then they sat around the fire for a while before they turned in for the evening. Oliver lit his pipe and began spinning yarns about some of his adventures as a trapper for the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. Oliver loved to yarn, and Little Dove and Finn just leaned back and let him have at it. They figured his stories were probably about 75% true, but they didn't mind the embellishments. Mountain men are noted for stretching the truth from time to time. The next morning dawned bright and lovely without a cloud in the sky. At around noon, they heard gunshots coming from the other side of a ridge. I think we have caught up with Rattlesnake, Finn said. The threesome worked their way to the top of the hill so they could look down into a valley. It took a while dragging all of their extra horses and the 3 donkeys to the top of the hill. The path was made up of a series of switchbacks that took time to negotiate. What they saw at the bottom of the valley caused them great anguish. 5 men lay dead and they were strewn around the valley floor. Even from that distance, nearing 200 yards, they could see they had been scalped. The threesome had never seen anything like the horse-drawn carriage sitting there. It was the sort of thing one just didn't see in the Rocky Mountains during that era. It was an expensive, fancy carriage. It was bright orange with yellow wooden, spoked wheels. It was enclosed and sported side curtains with black pom-poms dangling from the windows. The carriage was being drawn by two Frisian black stallions. One of the animals lay dead in the traces with 3 arrows sticking in its side. Frisians are one of the oldest domesticated horse breeds in Europe and generally owned by the nobility. The stallion still standing was elegant and majestic. He was black, sleek, and highly muscled. He held his head and tail high, and when he moved, he pranced. The Frisian horse is used for pulling carriages and for showings at horse shows in Europe, and not useful as a pony for carrying a man around in the Rockies. A man needs a sure-footed mountain breed for that. When the threesome approached the grisly scene, 3 warriors leapt on the backs of their ponies and rode off a ways and stopped. They went far enough to get out of rifle range. "Let's see what's in that fancy carriage," Finn said. Just before they reached the carriage, Rattlesnake leaped from a side door. He had a handful of women's black clothing in one hand and a suitcase in the other. Finn managed to fire 1 shot at him with his rifle, but he hurried the shot and missed. Rattlesnake escaped and joined the other warriors, and that angered Finn and Little Dove. They desperately wanted to settle the account with him then and there. When they peered in the carriage, they were shocked at what they seen. The most beautiful lady they had ever seen was in there, and she wasn't wearing a stitch of clothing. She lunged at Finn and tried to stick him with a slender little dagger she managed to retrieve from under the seat. Finn caught her arm, but she wiggled and fought, still trying to stick him, and when that failed, she spit in his face. "Whoa there! Whoa," he said. "We aren't here to hurt you. We are here to help you." "All right," she said, "but how was I to know? What happened to your clothes? Are you slow in the head? Obviously that heathen Indian undressed me, and he was getting ready to rape me when you intervened." She spit the words out with venom. It was obvious this woman was of Spanish nobility. She was haughty and imperious, and it never occurred to her to thank the threesome for preventing her from being raped and killed. The clothing Rattlesnake made off with was all black, a symbol of power and nobility for Spanish men and women. Rattlesnake wanted the clothing to give to a couple squaws he bedded, and he wasn't above wearing some of the stuff himself. "We'll step back from the carriage and allow you time to put on fresh clothing," Finn said. "You really must be stupid. Isn't it obvious to you that that Indian took all of my clothing?" Finn looked over to Little Dove. "Would you get in our packs and find her some of the clothing you have as a spare?" Little Dove returned with a buckskin outfit and handed it to the Spanish damsel. She turned her nose up at the sight of it. "What a simply ghastly-looking outfit. Do you expect me to wear this hideous clothing? I'd rather die." Little Dove's nostrils flared. "You'll wear it unless you want to parade around bare-assed, and I can assure you you'll regret it when it cools down this evening." The naked woman picked the clothing up with a thumb and forefinger. Is it clean?" "Clean enough," Little Dove said. "I only wore it for 10 moons before I changed out of it. What's your name anyway?" The woman shook her head in disbelief. "My name is Catalina. I'm Little Dove, and these 2 men are Finn and Oliver. Finn is my man and Oliver is our partner. We are trappers." Catalina smelled the buckskin clothing and wrinkled her nose. "Of course the clothing is clean. I washed it in the river yesterday. Now put it on or go bare-assed. I don't care one way or the other." Catalina took the buckskin outfit back into the carriage to put it on. Little Dove looked to Finn and then over to Oliver. "You 2 can put your eyes back in your heads now," she said. "Who? Us?" Oliver said. When Catalina emerged from the carriage, she looked quite fetching in her new buckskin outfit, but she didn't appear happy. "You look nice," Finn said. "Oh, please." Who were the men that were killed? Finn asked. Catalina turned around and fluffed out her hair. It was straight black, and when it caught the sun, it shone with a radiant sheen, as black as onyx. It had to be the most beautiful head of hair Finn had ever seen. One of them was my husband and the other 4 were servants, Catalina responded. Catalina didn't seem at all aggrieved over the loss of her husband and servants. She never shed a tear. Finn wondered if she loved him. He wondered if she was capable of loving anyone except herself. "Where were you going?" he asked. "We were going to California to buy property and build a rancho. But now I suppose that will never happen. This day has been rather irregular," Catalina said. Irregular wasn't a word Finn would have used to describe the day's events. Tragic seemed more fitting. "Who were you going to buy the property from?" Finn asked. "We were buying the property from a man named Juan Hernandez. He has a huge Spanish land grant and is willing to sell us 10 hectares or 100,000 acres of it. I figured he needed the cash. We imagined that was enough land to raise a good-sized herd of cattle and horses." Finn laughed. "Yeah, I would think so. How are you going to pay for it?" "I can't see that that's any of your business. Besides, you probably don't understand high finance. How much do you make selling those dreadful beaver pelts? $100 a year?" Finn shook his head. "I don't think I have ever met anyone as high and mighty as you. Here in the Rockies, you'll learn to work with others and tone it down, or you won't survive." "You dare to speak to me like that? You, a large dirty lout. That's it. You're on your own. Come on, Little Dove and Oliver. Let's get out of here. You've got that big black stallion to ride." "What? You can't just leave me here." "I'll pay you $1,000 to escort me to California to buy that land." "Not interested. We're chasing a murderous Indian." $2,000. "Nope. That's more than you can make in 10 years, trapping those loathsome water rats." "Probably. You know, we met Juan Hernandez last summer. I pity him if he has to deal with the likes of you." "What a dreadful thing to say." "All right, come on. We'll take you with us as far as the rendezvous in Pierre's Hole." "You'd drop me off amid all those disgusting trappers?" "I would." Suddenly, they were attacked by 4 of the Blackfeet that had been hanging back, but for some reason, Rattlesnake didn't join them. Finn and the rest of them hadn't been alert, and the Indians were on top of them before they knew it. Finn shot one off of his horse and killed him. Oliver fired and missed, and he caught an arrow in his leg and he went down screaming in pain. For some reason, 2 of the Assiniboine turned around and left. They went back to where Rattlesnake was waiting, but one warrior stayed and jumped off of his pony and attacked Finn with a knife and tomahawk. Oliver couldn't help because he was on the ground writhing in agony. Catalina escaped back into her carriage. The Assiniboine that attacked him was a huge brute and demonic in nature. He took a swipe at Finn's head with his hawk, but Finn managed to duck it. Then the Indian tried to disembowel him with a huge, ugly knife. Finn managed to leap backward and suck in his belly. The fight went on for a good 5 minutes, and the Blackfoot tried over and over to kill Finn, but Finn put up a good defense. Finn relied on some of the advice his friend Cash had given him about knife fighting before he was killed by Wolverine, but mostly Finn relied on instinct during the fight. Little Dove threw Finn a Green River knife and a war club, and that improved his chances of surviving the fight. Finn tried several times to hit the big Indian in the head with his war club and stab him, but the Assiniboine managed to get out of the way because he was tremendously fast. Finally, Finn got clipped in the head with the blunt end of the Assiniboine's hawk. It was only a glancing blow, but it was enough to put him on the ground fighting to stay conscious. He fought to keep from going under because he knew to pass out was to die. Little Dove raced over and leaped on the Indian's back, and she reached around and raked down both of his cheeks with her fingernails. He screamed because it burned like hellfire. He pulled her off of his back and punched her in the face. She fell to the ground unconscious. The Indian turned his attention to Finn. He was determined to finish him off. But Finn managed to get to his knees. He had a concussion, and his head was spinning. He was so disoriented that he threw up his breakfast in the dust. The big Indian saw that as an opportunity to finish him off, so he grasped his knife and rushed over to cut Finn's throat. But before he could get that done, Finn gathered up his weapons and got to his feet. Unfortunately, though, Finn was unsteady and swaying back and forth. The Indian begrudgingly admired Finn. Apparently, the big white man had courage, and Indians admire courage in a man above all else. But it didn't matter. He still intended on finishing him off. When the Indian closed in, he was met with a surprise. Finn dropped his hawk and punched him in the face. It was a terrific blow, and the Indian sailed backwards and landed on his back in a patch of pebbles. The Assiniboine no more than hit the ground, and Finn leaped on him and plunged his knife clear to the hilt into his throat. It was a last-ditch effort for Finn to survive the fight. The mortally wounded Indian tried mightily to do a death chant, but his throat was torn up so bad that all he could do was gurgle. Blood flooded from his nose and mouth, his eyes rolled back into his head, and he went off to the happy hunting ground. That afternoon, Little Dove extracted the arrow from Oliver's leg, cleaned the wound up nicely, and put a penstemon compress on the wound held in place by a strip of buckskin. "You'll be all right, unless it mortifies," she said. "Some people will do anything to get out of helping around the camp. It about killed me, digging all those graves by myself for all of Catalina's people," Finn said, laughing. "Oh, aren't you a barrel of laughs?" Oliver said. Catalina came out of the carriage and sat on a stump glaring at everybody. Little Dove cooked up a nice campfire supper, and she handed Catalina a dish of the food. Catalina turned up her nose at what was on the plate. "Certainly you don't expect me to eat this slop, do you?" Catalina asked. Little Dove slapped her, so she tried to attack Little Dove, but Finn broke them apart and ordered Catalina to get back on her stump and stay there. Little Dove promptly threw Catalina's food in the fire, dish, and all.
This concludes Part 4 of Finn Sullivan Mountain Man, Rattlesnake, Book 2 by author Scotty V. Casper, published by Dusty Saddle Publishing. Thank you for joining us on a read, and stay tuned for Part 5. Pick up more from Scotty V. Casper on Amazon, available on Kindle and paperback. Visit our website at dspublishingnetwork.com. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you have enjoyed listening to this story. Until next time.